do you think that Atmos is the future?
Having listened and compared a few, I think the Sonos is the best of the bunch. Delivered the Rita album and then got the Kali album off the back of it. For me, it's not quite where Atmos is.
How far off do you think we are getting Atmos support on streaming services like Spotify? Since the launch of the Sonos Era 300 earlier this year, there have been a lot of questions around Dolby Atmos, around spatial audio, and where we think music listening will go next. Well, we thought, why not take those questions that we have as consumers to the people at the very heart of the industry and those creating the content that we're listening to. So we took a trip up to London to meet with one of the top Dolby Atmos mix engineers to get a professional perspective on Atmos music, see how tracks are mixed, and of course chat about what products like the Era 300 mean for the future of audio. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one.
I engineered on Rain with H&AJ Tracy, which got me my first platinum disc, which was, yeah, pretty big achievement. And then moving into Atmos, you know, I get to work with some incredible artists. So Rita Ora, Kylie Minogue, Duran Duran, Alt J. It's been a good couple of years. I've been working in music for a good 8 or 9 years now, but Atmos itself, I've been working in Atmos for the last 2 years.
So guys, here we are outside Dean Street Studios. We're going to head inside, talk to Kurt in a little bit more detail about Dolby Atmos and mixing, and hopefully hear a couple of demos and yeah, see what he's got to say.
My name's Kurt Martinez. I'm head Dolby Atmos mix engineer at Dean Street Studios in London. I joined Dean Street in 2021 and started heading it up start of 2022. For me, I'm purely working Atmos now. Occasionally, you know, like I might have a job that requires me in stereo, or I might jump in on a session, you know, recording vocals like I used to. But now it's very much my day-to-day is Atmos, whether it's in music or podcasts for Audible. I'm very much, day-to-day I'm mixing in Atmos. I love it, and I can't imagine not working in it now. 2 years ago, I kind of came in with that mindset of, I don't know if it'll be around in 2 years. You know, my idea was it'll always be around in film, it'll always be around in games, so I'll ride it out in music for as long as I can, but that trajectory is always there. And now 2 years on, you know, like doing the Kylie Minogue record and the Rita Ora record, I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. It feels very much like it's here to stay, especially with, you know, Apple backing it, Amazon backing it, Tidal. I think if other streamers come on board, then I think it'll be a game changer, and it will definitely be here to stay. Before Apple launched Spatial, there was this idea that certain labels were going to start going down the route of Atmos, and at the time I think there were a few of us who were kind of like, well, what does that look like? You know, what's that going to sound like? How are streamers going to be able to, you know, make that happen on 2 speakers in headphones? So there's always these rumblings, and then there was this date put out by Apple, like, oh, we're going Spatial. You know, obviously they've got their partnership with Dolby, but I think since it's launched, Dolby have been, you know, front and center. They're, you know, every other day now, it's, oh, this album's coming out, this single's coming out, this release has been redone in Atmos. And, you know, initially when it started, there's a few iffy mixers, if you like, but as time's gone on, I think, you know, these mixers are sounding pretty good. Now I'm working in Atmos, you know, like we're kind of at the front of it, you know, we're trying to figure out how these things work. So it's almost like, you know, I'm coming in, I'm trying to, problem solving is one thing, and it's kind of figuring out, well, how would this work in Atmos as opposed to stereo?
Okay then guys, so very lucky to be sat here with Kurt. He's going to take us through a little bit of a Dolby Atmos mixing demo. So Kurt, over to you. Talk us through the process, the software you're using, and how you do what you do.
So I'm working in Pro Tools. As software goes, like I was saying, I get the stereo master and the stereo stems.
Yeah.
So this here is the stereo master.
Sure. So this song in particular here, then, what song is this? The
so
stems
this
and
is
master of?
React by Switch Disco and Ella Henderson. They were a relatively unknown band. I think I did it back in January, and then to watch it come out, the song was on Love Island. And then, you know, like over the course of 3 months, it came in at number 40, and then it's kind of climbed the charts.
Where are you kind of envisaging you listening to this when you're mixing?
Do you know, it changes from track to track, but typically I like to imagine, like I'll listen on headphones, shut my eyes, and I like the vocals to be up front, drums to be up front, and then any synths and things to be the thing that encases you, if you like.
Yeah.
And the backing vocals to sort of like envelope around you.
Yeah.
To create that space. So you've kind of got the artist at the front, and then everything else going off around you.
So what's your kind of process initially? Like, what are you thinking when you drop everything in?
So right from the off, for me, it's a case of taking the stems, matching it as closely as possible to that stereo master in stereo.
Yeah.
So you're kind of honouring the mastering engineer's work. And then I'll start to bring things into the room, start to send things out, start to use reverbs and delays to kind of start creating that that palette, if you like. Pretty good example here. So there's a nice little, like a glitchy synth.
Okay.
So yeah, these types of synths I like. As soon as I hear them, I know in the stereo it's kind of bobbling left to right.
Yeah.
So to me, it just kind of makes sense that it's doing something in the room.
Yeah.
There's a filter that comes in, and then as it starts to filter, I start to lift it in the room.
So on that screen up there, when you played it in stereo, the green balls in the bottom corners, that's just showing like left and right. But then when you turn Atmos on, as they start moving, that's indicating where the sound is moving whilst you're playing through it.
Exactly that.
And then you're playing with the height as well, hence that lifting in the room.
Yeah. So if I've worked on a track and something's worked in the past, then that'll become my starting point for the next track.
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of work from there.
How are you thinking in terms of height-wise?
The way your ears work, you kind of, you almost automatically put lower sounds on the ground and higher pitched sounds
higher.
And it's just, it's kind of automatic.
And this is pretty much between Pro Tools and this little bit of kit here. What you're using?
So we are using, so we've got two Macs. We've got a Mac Pro and a Mac Mini. The Mac Pro is running Pro Tools and doing most of the heavy lifting. The Mac Mini is running the Dolby Atmos renderer. So when we do printing, one's taking the load off the other. Basically with Atmos, you've got 128 outputs. The last two, 127 and 128, are reserved purely for stereo.
Okay.
So that's always my stereo output.
Right.
And I can flick on here between Atmos and stereo.
Yeah.
So all the way through I can A/B and check what's going on.
So we're really excited, Kurt, to chat to you in a little bit more detail. A couple of questions that we've got lined up for you. Interested to hear your thoughts. Obviously, we're coming from like a consumer point of view, right? So we listen to a lot of products all day, every day, test them out for our videos, but it's really nice to meet in the middle, someone who's actually creating what we get to listen to.
So the big question I think everyone wants to know is, do you think that Atmos is the future?
Yes, I hope so.
For your job.
Keeps me busy. I think we're at that transition now, like mono to stereo. I think it's that next transition. I've no idea what it looks like after this. But yeah, I think where we're at now, it feels like it's a good place. It feels like there's enough artists coming on board, enough labels backing what we're doing. It feels like it's the right trajectory.
Can you just talk us through how many speakers we've got in this room to achieve that kind of effect we've just heard?
Yeah, so we're a 914 setup. So we've got LCR, 2 wides, 2 sides, 2 rears, and then 4 on the heights.
And what brand have we got in here?
These are PMCs, MB3s at the front and CI series for the heights and surrounds.
Cool.
And what are we looking at roughly if you were to put a price on the kit in here?
At least in the hundreds.
Yeah.
100, yeah.
I mean, and I guess just for context for our viewers, the whole reason we even started this conversation was around the launch of the Era products. So Kurt found actually our Unit 16 podcast and left us a really nice message, and that's kind of how we've come along today. And you've got an Era 300, haven't you?
Yeah.
And how does that play a part in kind of your process? Like how are you using that in your day to day?
Yeah. So now it's very much it's sat in my living room. It's same with the headphones. It's a case of listening in a domestic setting. So like I say, done with a mix, and I'll make the MP4, and then with the Sonos, there's a way that you can stream MP4s from the Sonos software. So I'll do it, like in situations where I'm literally cleaning the house, washing the dishes, something. I've got that on, and if anything stands out to me, like listening on the headphones, then that's where I make the notes, and those are the things that I come back to address. But I think having a loudspeaker now, and not just having listening on headphones and listening on the commute, I've got another element where I can listen out loud in a room and kind of gauge what you're going to get on like your Apple HomePods or your Echo Studios, these things that are Atmos enabled. I think, having listened and compared a few, I think the Sonos is, the best of the bunch, but it gives a pretty good representation of what you're going to get on that type of technology.
We know from our community, we've seen like the comments that we get, some people are very much against Atmos. Yeah. When we've listened to a couple of tracks, not very many, but you do listen to a few now and again, you think that didn't quite land how you thought it was going to.
I think initially when Apple launched Spatial, I think some of the labels were very much like, we need content. And it was a case of, rushing out the odd bit of catalogue stuff. Maybe at the time, like some of the mixers that were working on that stuff, they were coming to the thing completely new. So a lot of it was guesswork. And I think the thing that's put some people off Atmos is, they might go out of their way to go and find a particular song that they like. That may not necessarily have been mixed that well in Atmos. And then straight away, that's them going, well, no, we don't like Atmos. I'm not going to listen to anymore. If you find the right content in Atmos, then I think the experience can be great.
But I suppose, like you said, but the beauty of doing what you're doing is you are able to go back, revisit stuff, and remix in Atmos again.
Yeah, exactly. It's ultimately you've got you get your remasters and things, like 10-year anniversaries and things. I've no doubt that down the line, some of these mixers that I'm working on now, probably, in 10 years' time or something, might get some sort of Atmos remaster and, end up being redone. And, that's probably the case for some of these early Atmos mixers. They may subtly get redone at some point.
What would you say are the differences between spatial audio, Dolby, 360? What are your kind of thoughts on all the differences, the different terminology and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think spatial is kind of a blanket term that I guess Apple have coined. For me, Atmos kind of covers the spatial thing. 360 as a format is, for me, it's not quite where Atmos is. Last year, I worked on something that went out and then it was converted on the Sony side of things. What actually released as 360 didn't sound anything like the Atmos mix that I'd done. So we ended up getting the Sony software, the 360 software, so we can do conversions in-house now and get things sounding as close as possible to the Atmos. So in Atmos, you can work with objects and you can pull sounds into the room as close as you like, so in towards your head. With 360, everything's kind of stuck to the wall. And if you can move it around that wall, but you can't move it inwards. You can move it up and down, but the whole time you're stuck to this sphere, essentially.
You get stuff that passes through one ear to the other.
Yeah.
You'd not get that with 360.
No.
Right.
You get it go around you or over you.
Yeah.
Not through you. With 360, it's kind of like what I was saying about those binaural settings for Atmos. So with Atmos, you can choose how near, mid, or far an object is. With 360, it's almost like everything's stuck to far or mid. And you can't change that.
How far off do you think we are getting Atmos support on stream services like Spotify? I
would like to think we're not far off. I think if Spotify come on board, then it changes the game for everyone. I think then we'll see a big boost in labels wanting things in Atmos, and we'll see a boom in independents wanting things in Atmos. I don't know how far off we are, but
You got an inside scoop for us.
I wish I did. But I think there will be. We'll see that same boom that we saw when Apple went spatial. There's a lot of content needed in Atmos. I think we'll see the same again with Spotify, but I think there'll be a lot more. I feel like we'll see a shift where pretty much most releases on a Friday will be in Atmos.
Like we've experienced today, how can other people try and experience this level? I mean, not to this level, but this kind of quality of where you're like, that's awesome, I want to listen to more of that.
Yeah, I'd say so Dolby on Instagram, they do a thing monthly where they kind of it's like a little playlist that they put together, their top 5 or top 10, and those tend to be good mixes. They're done recently, not necessarily going back and looking at older things. So yeah, that's a good place to look. The spatial playlists on Apple typically hits in spatial, pop in spatial, made for spatial, tend to be good mixers.
So there we have it, guys. We hope that you've thoroughly enjoyed this video just as much as we've enjoyed coming down here, Kurt, meeting yourself, getting to experience listening to a couple of tracks that you've mixed in Atmos. So if you guys want to see more content like this, then please let us know down in the comments below. But as for right now, I think we're all going to spend the next couple of hours chilling with you, Kurt, listening to some of your mixes. So thank you very much for today. Really
cheers for coming. I've really enjoyed it.